And here is the legend himself, Gary Powell. Welcome, sir.
The music for that is obviously the wrong one for the reel. I'm sure you're aware.
Yeah, yeah, because it's copyrighted, I guess.
Yeah, but the music is actually it was made for me. The music.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, Martin Campbell's son Fabrice actually did it for us.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, so he made the original music for me.
Very nice. So yeah, we got like 2.5 minutes and on screen, and how many months of planning and organizing?
Yes, yeah.
But is that the life for a stunt coordinator and second unit director? It's all just in the before it's even filmed.
Yeah, no. So I mean, a classic example of sort of prep was like, say, Casino Royale and the opening sequence. That was easily 3 months of prep for that, with the design and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But obviously it paid off because we got what we got. So.
And it is epic, isn't it?
It is.
Great introduction to the new Bond.
Yeah. No, it was obviously the pressure was on, which was nice. You know, it was my step into the big world per se. You know, I've done a couple of jobs before that as a coordinator, but pretty much under the radar.
Okay.
Whereas that was going to put you sort of like, you know, front page, and if you fucked it up, you'd be in trouble, sort of thing. So, you know, I was under pressure. Daniel was under pressure because obviously all the blonde Bond publicity and all that sort of shit. And I think it just made us more determined to sort of do a good job, and we did. And it was, you know, it was the best sort of basically fuck you to all the people that were negative about us.
Well, yes, the whole film, because well, the Aston Martin role that you did, was that in the script as
so
role?
The crash was in the script, and Martin Campbell come to me and he said, look, I want the best crash you can come up with, but I want to shoot it in one angle. I don't want to do the normal thing where you see a car roll over, then they cut to another car, and you know it's the same role just being done multiple times. Right. So you know, I did some research on some stuff, and then we sort of come up with the way we did that one. And obviously, you know, we had two versions we was going to try. We had one with a ramp and one with a cannon. The ramp one in early stages was working really well, but we was using different test cars. We was using BMWs. And then when we switched to the Aston, because the Aston is so much more rigid, the ramp sort of didn't work as good. So we had it on the day. We thought, well, look, we'll try it just for shits and giggles, see what happens. And it didn't work. And we went back to the cannon, and that worked perfectly.
Nice. Because how does it feel to destroy an Aston Martin, even though it's not a proper official a street version? But yeah, because
no, it's nice. Obviously, you know, we had the Aston there, and then on Quantum of Solace, we had the DB11, which we absolutely destroyed 7 of those. So it's actually a really nice feeling, I must say.
Yeah, because I've actually driven one just around a track a few times.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, always makes me sad when they're smashed to smithereens or flung off a cliff or blown up.
Yeah, no, we had some fun with them. Like we was testing them down Dunsfold and all that. So, you know, we had a nice few laps around the Top Gear track and all that. So,
just to test it out, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now, it's uncredited, but is Carry On Dick your first film?
It is. The medieval one, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, is that what it was called? So, do you know what? I could never remember what it was called. So I'm glad you said that.
Well,
yeah, I was 10 years old.
Yeah, so it's the one that came out in 74, so I figured it was that one.
Yeah, I was 10 years old, bunking off school as usual. And they was doing the jousting, and my dad was there, my brother and my uncle, because they used to do that reenactment stuff. And as usual, one of the actors was supposed to take part in the jousting tournament and sort of said, yeah, of course I can ride a horse, as they all do. Then got there on the day and couldn't. And me being 10, I was roughly the same size.
Okay.
So they stuck the costume on me and kicked me off down the jousting tilt.
Ah, nice. Maybe it's Carry On Henry then, if it's jousting.
Yeah, probably Carry On Henry.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'll have to look for you.
So yeah, so that was my introduction technically to the stunt world.
Nice, because well, you come from a dynasty of stunt people, don't you?
I do, yeah. Dad, brother, uncle. So
nice. Is there a film that all 4 of you have ever worked on?
No, because Dad and Denny
Mm.
sort of retired per se when I become a coordinator.
Okay.
But obviously, me and Greg have worked a few times, and Greg, and Denny have worked a few times. But Dad was sort of more. He sort of knocked it on the head earlier on. So,
Yeah. No worries.
But
So, what's the speaking of which, best 80s British cars for doing stunts in?
oh,
What do you
best
reckon?
80s.
Yeah.
I think realistically, you got to go along the lines of the Ford, like the Ford Capri, the Ford Escort.
Yeah.
And realistically, the old Jags, if you're going like old school gangsters and all that, everyone loved the Jag. So,
Mm.
they was probably the go-to cars earlier on
Yeah.
in them days.
Yeah. Because I grew up on like the Sweeney, the Professionals, Dempsey
Yeah, well, the professionals always had the Capri and the Mark II Escort.
Yeah. I always liked the police cars in the 80s, the Rovers they used to have.
Oh yeah, the old Rover SD1 and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, no, they was nice cars actually. And then they brought the like the V8 350 out, which is not a bad car.
Nice. Have you? Because you've done all these Bond films that we'll get to in a minute, most of them. Do you ever get to the premieres? Are you?
Yes. No, I've been to the 4 premieres that I did, which were absolutely amazing. The best one is like we done a couple at the Royal Albert Hall, and you got like 8,000 people there, and royalty turn up and you meet those, which is obviously a huge privilege. I met the Queen for the Casino Royale one, which was pretty special.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, no, they are. They're very unique, and I don't think you'll find any other premiere in the world comes anywhere close to them.
No, because they're still the big ones. Because a lot of other stuff just like they don't bother or anything. But yeah, the Bond films are always in London.
Yeah, no, they're pretty special. I mean, most premieres now they sort of come and go, and no one really pays attention to them. But the Eon production team always used to put on a good show for that. That's for sure.
I guess it'll come up at some point. But yeah, the future of Bond. What's that? Do you think of that? Now it's on
I was very surprised with the news. And who knows? You'd like to think that you'd hope they're going to do a good job of it.
Yeah.
That's the only thing you can do is you can hope they do a good job of it and keep it in line with the way it's worked so well for 60 years. So
yeah.
So fingers crossed they do a good job.
Let's hope so. So you done some British TV, The Bill, where you were
Done
Brian
Bill,
Butler and Malone.
Yeah, I've done quite a few episodes of The Bill. They was always good fun, super good fun. They was. So I've done a few episodes of those. I think I've done episode of EastEnders once. Can't even remember what I was doing on it. And Between the Lines.
Oh yes. But you've done an episode of Red Dwarf. Remember that one?
Red Dwarf I've done. Again, don't ask me what I've done because it was so long ago I can't even remember. Between the Lines, Emmerdale Farm, I think I did once riding a motorbike and crashing a motorbike.
Waiting for God.
Yeah.
You read some of these out and you think, what the hell do you need a stunt performer? 4 episodes of Waiting for God. What's going on in that one?
Yeah, exactly. Most of the time, some of them things you could just be, depending on what it is, you could just be driving a car down the road and all that sort of stuff. It's so long ago.
Well, speaking of the new Bond, because David, was it Heyman? Now in the showrunner for Bond, and you've done 3 of his Harry Potters. What were you in that?
That's 3. Yeah, so I did Hagrid jumping into Pyrrhic Drive on the first one, drove the night bus, and a load of wire work on the second one.
Excellent. Another piece of history there, isn't it? Then you were in Ireland for Far and Away.
Far and Away, yeah. Brother was in charge of that one, but I was out there as a performer.
Right.
That was the first time working with Tom Cruise, which was great. And then I worked with him again on Mission and also Interview with a Vampire, which was pretty good.
Were the part shot in the UK, or is that something that was
the Mission was part shot here and also Interview. Combination of New Orleans and here.
Just a well-traveled man. Do you do mostly in the UK if you can, or do you just jobs?
I mean, when you first come on, I was traveling all over the place, which I loved. And as you sort of get a family, you try and stay at home as much as you can. But I had spent like 10 months in Mexico on Titanic and various other jobs where you're away for months on end. But when you're sort of like, by yourself, you don't really care about that. But as soon as the old kids come in, you're afraid you want to be at home with them as much as you can.
Yeah. Okay. How much were you in Titanic if you were there for 10 months?
I mean, we was in all of us. There was quite a big core team on that, and we was constantly changing costumes and being different people all the time.
Right.
So realistically, from the moment it hits the iceberg, we're in it all over the place.
Nice. The big slide as it goes up.
Yeah, all that. Yeah, that was a big 90-foot poop deck that they had custom built. That used to go up and down on hydraulics, and then the massive boat itself, which they could literally tilt, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's a big set, isn't it? Who's done some? Was it Ridley Scott with a 1492?
Yep, that was shot Spain and Costa Rica.
Oh, very nice.
So we was in Costa Rica for a few months, which is absolutely beautiful and sort of, very remote when we got there. I can't imagine what the town's like now, probably a lot more built up. But when we was there, it was absolutely spectacular.
Nice. Is it like some of the fight scenes in the battle or on the ship?
I mean, it was the whole stuff, the battles and the ship stuff and, the beach landings and all that. We was doing the whole lot.
Cool. So I guess it would be the same. Was it Braveheart and what's the other one? Around that time, 2 epics. Can't see.
Or Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, I'd Saving Private Ryan because you did Saving Private Ryan and Band of Brothers. So even
so obviously Braveheart was shot partly in Scotland, then Ireland, and then it was back again in Ireland for Saving Private Ryan, then bits in England.
Right. So it was the beach attack at the
beach
beginning.
Was in Ireland. Yeah, the beach was in Ireland. And we had like a quarter of a mile of the beach all done up like it would have been on the day. And it was, again, when you're coming in on the landing crafts, if you actually sort of put your mind to what it must have been like on the day, you can't imagine what it was like, but you certainly get a sense of like it was horrific, really, because, when that drawbridge went down on the boat, pretty much every soldier in front of you would have got shot and killed. So pretty horrific. I mean, lucky enough, we was pretend, but you could put yourself there and think, bloody hell, this is,
Yeah, it's quite easy, I imagine. Yeah, even watching the film, I had shell shock afterwards. So
no, exactly.
And when you're recreating it, even if it's moments at a time. So I guess was it Band of Brothers? Where were you for that one? That was
I was only in one particular scene with that. Again, my brother was running the show on that, and I was busy on something else, and I had some time off, and he brought me on, and it was I can remember the scene. We was the Germans coming across a field, and all the Americans were hidden in the tree line and ambushed us and all that sort of stuff.
Do you like squibs, or do you find them a nuisance?
No, they don't bother me. I like all that. It's all pretend stuff, so it's fine. Running around. You're like big kids running around with little toy guns. You know what I mean? So you can't not enjoy yourself.
Back to Bond. What's your favorite Bond car out of all of them? That even if you've never seen one, you fancy.
I mean, ones that I've worked with. I mean, the DB11 was a nice car. The DB10 that we had was really nice. That was nice. But if it's my favourite sort of Bond car, there's 2 realistically. Obviously, it has to be the Aston Martin DB5, and it's also the Mark I Mustang from Diamonds Are Forever, because that was the first Bond film I actually see. And I always remember that car chase. I've always got a sort of passion for that Mustang.
Yeah, that's a big muscle car.
So
he forget. Yeah, the DB5 reappears in the modern timeline, isn't it? Because
correct,
he wins in Casino Royale, and then you destroy it in Skyfall, which is
that's right.
Nice of you. What's it? 47 Ronin.
Yep.
Where was that filmed
in
the UK?
That was Shepperton Studios and Budapest. No, Prague.
Okay.
Budapest. Sorry, yeah, Budapest. Yeah, all the boat stuff and interiors were there, and then the big castle was at Shepperton Studios for that. It was a big set as well.
Yeah, I do enjoy that film. I know it wasn't well received when it came out, but it's really great fun.
Yeah, no, it's good fun to work on, that's for sure.
You did more Spielberg with Ready Player One.
Ready Player One, yeah, that was all shot at or mostly shot in Leavesden Studios, and then up in Birmingham for some of the car stuff or the van chase. So
okay,
but yeah, no, that was actually a really sort of fun film to work on because they had so much sort of 80s video game and all that memorabilia on it, and obviously we was interacting with, like, you know, King Kong and all that. Even though it's all motion captured, we was doing all the movements for it. So, and then some of the sets did have all the old proper video games on there and Robbie the Robot and all that sort of stuff. So cool. For a sort of 80s fan and stuff of that stuff, it was good to see.
Because that would have been a lot of green screen work, would it?
Yeah, we done quite a lot of motion capture on that. Obviously for the big car chases and all that sort of stuff and the digital stuff. We spent a lot of time, but it's good.
Because that goes like I guess the same for the Ant-Man that you were stunt coordinator on.
Yeah, Ant-Man is like literally blue screen. You know, it's you know, they start off with a few set pieces, and as you go on, it just becomes less and less and less, and just more sort of digital stuff. So it's, you know, it's hard when you're sort of there, sort of, you know, you do the stuff and then you see what they do to it afterwards. You're like, oh, okay, that's what we was looking at, and you know, they'll have pictures or something and all that. So
yeah. So when you're brought on for something, I guess with what that is green screen like that, as coordinator, is it more tricky or is it easier if it's just one big green room?
It's easier because you know, if you're doing stunts where people are falling all over the place, you can put pads down easy and harnesses and all that, and it's all taken out so much easier. If you're doing it for real, you know, it's hard to hide things sometimes. You know, you can have set pieces made and all that, but you can't always do that. So if it's a blue screen environment, it's a lot easier to work on. But for me personally, it bores my freaking brains out. You know, so, you know, you don't mind doing it for a week or two, but when you're doing it for like weeks and weeks and weeks, it's I'd rather go to the dentist personally.
Well, I guess it pays the bills.
It does.
But yeah, I think, like me, you used to emulate stunts from television programs such as Chips and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, Chips was a big influence for me. There was one particular scene in a Chips one where a guy was on an XR500 wheeling down the road, sort of going in and out between cars, and I believe it was Gary Davis, and I met him years later and sort of spoke to him about it. And I was like, "You rode the bike doing that?" He went, "Yeah." I went and bought an XR500 and practiced until I could do that. So it was mega to actually meet him. So that was really nice. Yeah,
that's cool. Because, well, I always thought of myself as a stuntman, but I was just doing bike ramps and stuff, pedal bikes, not like your motorbike stuff. But my mother had a big 80s Volvo, and it had a massive bumper on the back. And we lived in the country. We had a gravel lane that was sloped down to the main road. And she'd pull out of the car park at the top, and then I would run after the car, step on the bumper, and then jump on the roof while she drove down the road. Sometimes she didn't know I was on there, so I had to... yeah, stupid stuff. Yeah, not wise stuff to do at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Not recommended. So, Lost in Space, though. I had Stephen Hopkins on a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, no, Lost in Space. Again, I was sort of more of a day player on that. Again, my brother was in charge of that one, which was cool. Yeah, I was just on there as a day player. I think I was doing some wire work on there and all that sort of stuff. But it was nice to sort of see, you know, their version of their Robbie the Robot and all that sort of stuff. All real, inside the spacecraft and all that sort of stuff. So.
Yeah, you did work together with him on Life and Death of Peter Sellers.
Correct. Yeah, that's right. I think I was driving a car on that one. I wasn't doing too much because there wasn't a lot. I think I was just driving a car.
Yeah, because I don't remember much action in that. Yeah.
No, there literally wasn't. So,
Have you seen the finished film?
For
Life and Death of Peter Sellers.
I see it years ago.
Mm.
I have not watched it for a long time now.
He didn't come across as very well in that film, him as a person, but yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever. Terminator 3. You did the crane chase, did you?
I did the crane chase in Terminator 3, which was great fun. It was obviously it was all shot in Los Angeles, so we spent quite a bit of time out there. And I had sort of weeks and weeks of rehearsal in the crane, and managed to do some pretty unusual stuff in it. It was going up on like side wheels and skiing it around corners. The crane in length was 50 foot long, and when the crane arm was off to the side, it was 55 foot wide. And I had to go along a road and turn a corner into a street that was 65 foot wide, so there wasn't a lot of margin for error.
But it looks good.
Yeah, no, it's good fun, really good fun.
Yeah, you get to crash it and flip it. Always. Oh, here's an odd one. Fierce Creatures. The who is that? John Cleese film.
That's it, yeah. Simon Crane was in charge of that one. He was the stunt coordinator on that. Again, I was only a day player on that one, but it was nice to sort of see all the sort of people. I think it was there was a rhino scene in it or something like that, where someone was getting pinged up in the air. I think that was it. And I was there to do some wire work with that and all that.
That's cool. Some First Night as well. That was the other one I was talking
about. So First Night was actually really funny because we'd literally just finished filming Braveheart, where it was all sort of gritty and the fights were more sort of brutal, covered in blood all the time. And then you come back to First Night, and it was all like your costume was clean. There was no mud on it. There was no blood on you. Obviously, because the rating was different and all that. So it's actually nice not to be covered in sticky blood all day long.
Yes, that's the PG, isn't it? Yeah. Did you get to meet Sean at all? Or
yeah, no, I met him because he sort of knew Dad from the Bond days and all that. And obviously, my brother again was in charge of that one. So I had a conversation with Sean and that, and super nice guy, and obviously a legend and what he is.
Yeah, of course. But what about Legionnaire with Van Damme in '98?
So that was shot in Morocco, Tangier, and then a place called Afud, which is like a 5-hour drive into the Sahara Desert. And it was the first time I'd been there. And when I left, I swore I'd never go back. And I've been back there about 4 or 5 times.
Okay.
But that was, again, they're all sort of good films. You have a laugh on them. But it was nice being in Morocco. Like I said, it's the first time I was there, and being in the desert place and all that. It certainly brings you back down to earth of what you think you're doing, or you think, being in England, you think, I could do with doing something better, and then you go there and see how people live out there, and it certainly brings you back down to earth of a bump. That's for sure.
Okay, yeah.
But no, go on.
Sorry. No.
Amazing place to work. I mean, Afud is. It's like I said, I've got sort of like a love-hate relationship with a place, but it is a pretty unique place.
Nice, because that was Van Damme's late '90s, so he would have been. People have been saying his ego was a bit out of control by that point.
He weren't too bad. I mean, because we was in the middle of the desert, there wasn't really anything to, have an ego about. Do you know what I mean? Just turn up to work and do your job. So he was all right. He was fine.
Good, nice. The late Val Kilmer in the Saint.
The Saint. I was involved in that. We shot that in Moscow. So it was all the tall building stuff and all that. So he was out there for a while. Again, that was fine. He had a little fight scene to do. And I worked with him before on Willow many years ago when I was an extra.
Okay.
So coming up with him again, that was fine. It was good fun. It was actually nice because he was going out with Cindy Crawford at the time when he brought her a set, so that was all right.
There's some perks to stunt work then.
Yeah, exactly.
Although there's a few lovely ladies in your history here. But 28 days later.
I literally done one. I was literally one day on that. I was driving a taxi. I had to sort of swerve and just do a little bit of a taxi. So yeah, not a huge lot on that. So
okay. Done Titanic. Oh, Blade 2 was that in Eastern Europe as well?
Blade 2, yeah, that was in Prague. I went over. What? It was in Prague, and I got brought on to take some people over there to do some fight stuff and all that. So obviously working with Wesley Snipes and all that.
Yeah.
And then his stunt double, Clay Fontenot, was an amazing guy. So yeah, it was good fun. Mostly working nights because obviously the vampires and all that, and some of the street stuff. But yeah, no, good film, really fun. And sort of, the both of them, especially the first Blade, I still think it's an amazing film and even holds up today. And when you watch it, it's a freaking amazing film.
Yeah, certainly is. What do you feel about the Oscars celebrating stunt work? Is that positive or a negative now?
I mean, it's great. It's nice to get the recognition. I personally never become a stuntman to win an Oscar. I've become a stuntman just to do the best stunts that I could. But it's nice, to get the recognition. Obviously, we got the award shows and all that. But I'm like a lot of the people. I'm old school, where realistically we was always in the shadows. But then when you compare it, pretty much every other department gets recognised. So it was only fair that realistically we did get it. How they're going to sort of say gauge it of how they award it is still up in the air. Is it an individual stunt or is it the overall the film? To be decided, I suppose.
Yeah, they might have opened a can of worms, mightn't they?
Yeah, exactly.
Is it the 2 Mummy films? Is that back in the desert again?
Yeah, that was back in Morocco, funny enough, in the same place, the Food, with Stephen Summers and Brendan Fraser. I mean, they was 2 real fun films, a lot of fun films to work on, really, like good crews, and the cast are all great and all that. And, shot a lot of stuff in and around London, Shepperton Studios, and then back in my favourite place again, Morocco. But yeah, no, they was good fun, really good fun.
Let's have a look before we get back. Unstoppable, we saw in the clip at the beginning. A lot of dangerous stuff on top of a moving train. Yeah,
that was obviously an amazing job to work on, and obviously to work with Tony Scott, in his last film, unfortunately.
Yes.
But it was hugely challenging because we pretty much travelled across the whole of Pennsylvania and had all seasons. We were sort of shooting in the snow one day where we had to sort of wait for the snow to stop, then carry on shooting. And obviously, I've got Denzel Washington on the top of a train. The train was like doing 50 miles an hour. So an average run was a mile up to speed, 5 miles of shooting, then a mile to slow down. So a lot of work, because obviously we had to get sections of train where we didn't have any bridges or overhead power cables and stuff like that, because obviously we had wires and safety, rigs on the trains. So we had to get up like super early, generally be on set at like 4 o'clock in the morning. The train would come to us because it'd have to be stored somewhere, and it'd come to us through the bridges or the whatever, and then we'll have the track clear, and then we'll rig everything, and then we'll be off filming. But that was an amazing experience, that one, really good.
Oh, well, nice. And then you did some Zorro work, in that.
Yeah, that was in Mexico, a place called San Luis Potosi, 3 hours outside of Mexico City. Again, we was there for probably 8 or 9 months.
Right.
And, hooking up with Martin Campbell again, who I've worked with quite a few times. And the first time with Antonio Banderas, and he was absolutely mega to work with. Such a nice guy, like super nice guy. So we had a lot of fun. Done some really good stuff on that as well. It was all in camera. It was only visual effects. There was just like taking out some of the safety cables, but we did a lot of real good fun, real stuff on that.
You saw the clips, the horses going through that.
That was Brett. Brett, I can't remember his second name now, so sorry, Brett, if you're listening. He was a carriage racer.
Oh, right.
From Canada, and literally he could drive a set of horses literally around a course, like a racing driver in a car. He was like inch perfect every time. Hence how we could build the columns and you could put the horses the either side of it and have the piece of the cart hit it and all that. Pretty impressive, really impressive driver.
Cool. What's one of your favorite 80s action films that you've watched? Not necessarily been in or anything like that. You think that's amazing?
80s really has to be like, the first Terminator. Obviously the Bonds, if they was around, like the late, that would have been, who was that? Timothy Dalton. That would have been
Living Daylights and
Living Daylights and all that. Can't remember what else was around in the 80s, to be truthful. I mean, it would have been like a Spielberg film or some sort, like a Back to the Future or something like that. E.T. or something like that. They would have all been mega.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you did the
Sorry for the background noise. It's the girlfriend making the coffee, so you can blame her.
Well, I'll have 2 sugars. So yeah, GoldenEye. You were in the tank in that one as Pierce, were you?
Yeah, that was my first Bond film. Again, first time working for Martin Campbell. I was brought on specifically to do the tank, even though I was in it everywhere else. Because there's one bit where I run into the cell where Bond's getting interrogated and get beaten up, and then there's another bit where we're on the destroyer in Monte Carlo Harbour, and I grab hold of Pierce, and then I'm at the end in the control room where that blows up, and then mostly driving the tank.
Because it says Pierce is double in some of the.
Well, I mean, so technically the double, but I was driving the tank, so technically I was doubling, but I wasn't. I was in a totally different place, and then I doubled him again on The World Is Not Enough in the boat.
The Thames scene.
But if I could look like Piers Brosnan, I'd be over the moon. Like,
I would say you're too handsome to do Piers, aren't you?
He's a good-looking chap. He really is. So, but yeah, no, I look nothing like Piers Brosnan.
Do you think he could come back for one more old?
Do you know what? I've seen the rumours, and I think it'd be absolutely fantastic if he did, just as a one-off. I think it'd be brilliant.
Yeah.
So, if they could write the right story for that, I think it could work really well.
Yeah. Because how much was the boat chase? Because that takes a good chunk at the beginning of the film.
Yeah, we was practicing at Hawley Lake for quite a while, because we had a few jumps to do, and just obviously the jet boat was something like none of us had ever drove before. And what we learned very quickly is it works really, really well on still water. Right. But sometimes when we was on the Thames and it was a bit choppy, like it become pretty tricky. So we had our work cut out on that, but it was good. It was definitely good fun to do it. I had a bit of we was rehearsing one of the jumps one day and the boat spun over in the air. It's actually on YouTube on the Down the River episode of the behind the scenes there, and the boat come over on top of me and landed on top of me and carted me off to hospital for the night. So, but I come back, I was all right.
That's the main thing, because there is a shot where the boat flips in the air.
Down the barrel roll. Yeah, so the jump I was rehearsing wasn't supposed to go over, but we found out afterwards that the ramp was slightly off angle, and it was supposed to be like spirit level straight, but it wasn't. Anyway, a mistake that we learned our lesson from. But the barrel roll, that took us quite a while to perfect that, because we was trying it off a ramp and we could only ever sort of get upside down. We couldn't get all the way around, and it was actually Dave Bickers, who used to build a lot of the stunt equipment and all that. He come up with the idea of putting 2 nitrogen cannons in the back of the boat, one facing up, one facing down, so it would give us the rotation. So we hailed the boat up in the air, and I was pressing the button. I knew roughly how long I'd be in the air for. It's about 1.6 seconds, something like that. So we sort of tried it up in the air, and I'm like, okay, right, let's give it a go. So we was testing it from jumping from water to land, because obviously a roll cage in a boat in the water doesn't work. So we had some box rigs and all that. And we done that a few times where I was confident, like, okay, right, on this speed. I can even remember it was 4,500 revs, and the time it was 4,500 revs, hit the ramp, hit the button. And it literally was that quick. And, you know, we did it once on the day and it worked perfect.
Excellent. Yeah, so it's always great when Bond in London, especially doing some action scenes.
Yeah, no, it's nice being, you know, we was in obviously the docks. We had a big old crowd, and they didn't really know what we was going to do because they never seen any of the rehearsals. All they knew, there was a ramp in front of this boat, and I think they just assumed I was going to jump it. But when it spun in the air, and then I landed, there was a nice round of applause from them and everyone else. And you know, I was in one piece, which was really nice. So
that certainly helps with this work.
It does.
Because and you took out those bloody parking warrant officers, didn't you?
But funny enough, that was Wade Eastwood that did that bit. I did all the jumps in that, and then Wade did that bit. But it was actually nice to put those parking warders there because they actually didn't know that was coming. So that was quite nice.
Yeah, you can see their reaction after the minute. They go,
yeah, and it was cold as well because I think that was like January, something like that. So it was the water was frigging cold.
Yeah, they probably thought, we'll get splashed a little as it goes past.
Yeah, exactly.
No, they just got taken out. I'm surprised they were still standing. Tomorrow Never Dies, of course.
Tomorrow Never Dies. I was only in that, funny enough, for a day. I got brought in. There was going to be a fight and that, and I you know, we stood there as the baddies, and then the fight never happened for timing reasons and that. You know, credited for it, but didn't really do anything.
Still not to be credited. Exactly. And then you, of course, Die Another Day.
Yeah,
I believe that's 23 years ago now. Bloody hell.
Yeah, 23 years. I mean, it goes so bloody quick. Yeah, so no, actually, it was Die Another Day that I was in for a day, not the other one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I got that wrong. No, it was Die Another Day I was only in for a day for. But again, you know, it's always nice to go on there and see everyone and all that. So.
Yeah, I spoke to Rocky Taylor last year. Do you know Rocky?
Yeah, I've known Rocky. I've known Rocky for years because he's like best friends with my brother. So I've known Rocky for a long, long time.
Yeah, how did you feel about his accent? Did that change anything in the industry?
I mean, you know, accidents like that you always learn from. You know, obviously there was a lot of factors, unfortunately for Rocky, that went against him that day, the wind and everything, you know what I mean? So, and he bloody lucky, you know, though he never walked away from it on the day, he was lucky to ever walk again after that. Do you know what I mean? That could have really been it. So, you know, so obviously there was a lot of lessons learned from there. But you know, most important thing that Rocky managed to sort of get back up again and carry on because you know, from that height and pretty much landing flat on the floor, that could have been it. You know, so
and then added with fire as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so no, lucky.
So I think we're in the home stretch. I think.
Okay.
The Island with Michael Bay.
Oh, that was in so I was only on that for about 4 days, but we was in Los Angeles, and funny enough, I just finished working on Zorro, and Wade Eastwood actually called me up. Was working for Kenny Bates, who's Michael Bay's coordinator. He said, "Oh, do you fancy coming to do a bit of driving for a few days?" So I was like, "Yeah." So we went down to like somewhere near Huntington where they had this new stretch of freeway that was just being built, wasn't open. And we spent 4 days going up and down there, smashing cars absolutely to pieces. But it was really funny because Michael would turn up and, you know, be in the helicopter and you're sitting there and he'd just sort of rock up and go, "Right, action, go, right, go faster, go this, go that." So, it's quite a mad few days that was.
I bet, yeah. He still likes to do a lot of practical crashes and stuff like.
Yeah, no, he does. He's, you know, as an action director, he's definitely up there as one of the top boys because he loves his action.
Because you see some other action films and they say, "Well, you see the making of it." He says, "Well, we put all these cars in here, and then in the background they're crashing into it." And you think, "Well, it's not quite the same, is it?"
No, exactly. Yeah, no. I mean, you know, especially with the films he's done, like Bad Boys and all that sort of Transformers and all that. You know, it's just non-stop.
So I was working on a video because Quantum of Solace, which is one of the reasons I got in touch about the making of that, and then of course you're in the making of video a few times.
Yeah, no, Quantum of Solace is obviously we start off with a big old car chase. That was in Lake Garda, and that's the one where we had the 7 Aston Martins, and especially in the quarry, like I had Martin Ivanhoe driving the Aston, and he's a freaking great driver, but he does love smashing them as well. So, but that was the sort of key. It's like we were sort of pushing it, and it's like, listen, don't if the car gets damaged, don't worry about it. As long as you're fine, that's all we care about. You know what I mean? Cars are like a piece of plastic, piece of metal, whatever. They can all be fixed and repaired. And we had Graham Kelly, who's the action vehicle guy. He did an amazing job of all the roll cages and fixing the cars and all that. And that's how we managed to get the chase we sort of got, because we didn't mind damaging them.
Yeah, because one of the complaints about that film is the editing style is similar to the Bourne.
Yeah, they went a little bit sideways on that one. Just I think because the Bourne series was doing so well, they sort of tried to mimic it. But James Bond's not a Bourne film, nor is a Bourne film a James Bond film. They're quite unique in their own ways. So thankfully when Sam Mendes come back on, we went back to more traditional Bond, and obviously Skyfall worked brilliantly. So,
were you aware of what they would do in editing when you were filming it, or you just filmed?
Yeah, they was talking about it, and it's like, okay, well, it's fine. There's nothing I can do about it, but they all think they're doing the right thing at the time. We had Mark Forrester, who was the director, so that was his sort of, that's what he wanted to do. So,
yeah, because I guess
the thing I like about it is like they're trying something different rather than just which is it's nice to try something different. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I know a lot of Bond fans didn't take sort of kindly to it, so tried it, didn't work, went back to normal.
Well, why not? Yes, because that was about the time of the writer's strike. Because the script was
we literally started production, and then they did that, so that was we only had like half a script, so there was sort of frantic sort of stuff going on there. We figured it all out, so they got it done. So
because is it like in the old Bonds, I think it was like they'd come up with stunts and then work the story around it eventually, and then.
We had obviously we had the nice boat chase to do out in Panama, which was fun. We had the skydiving sequence to do, which we did most of that visual effects and all that, and then the fire stuff at the end in the building. Again, fire's always interesting to work with and all that. So there was some decent stuff on there.
Yeah, okay, because there's a making of, so you're there trying to film a film, and then you've got the making of crew with filming you make. Is that a nuisance at times? Or
you sort of switch off to it, because they generally, when they're there, they're pretty good. They sort of keep out of the way.
Okay.
They know when to talk to you, and not if you're sort of setting up big stuff. They're a team that work there all the time, so they pick their moments. Always good. You know what I mean? And they respect what we're doing, the same as we respect what they're doing. They want to get information off of us, obviously, for the behind the scenes. But, as usual with anything, there's times when you should do it and there's times when you don't. And, both sides work really well with that.
Okay. Because did I see in that making of that you were training Olga Kurylenko?
Yes. Yeah, she had to come in. She was doing, because obviously she had to do the skydiving stuff and the boat stuff. So we spent a lot of time up in Bedford, the iFly there, doing the indoor skydiving, which is actually a really tricky scene, because we were literally in there. So we took all the safety windows out, which normally stop you from going outside the tunnel.
Oh, okay.
We took them all out because of the reflections, and we had to put lights in there then to get the cameras in there. So that was a tricky little number. And then obviously driving the boat and all that. Obviously we had a hidden driver in the boat, which is Wade Eastwood, funny enough. He was sitting underneath the console, and then the actors could sort of do their bit. Obviously, Daniel was more than capable of driving a boat, but when there was Olga and that, she drove it a little bit, but most of the time it was Wade Eastwood sitting underneath in the cupboard driving it. It just makes life easier.
Yeah, I bet. Especially when those two are supposed to be fighting as well.
No, exactly.
Cool. Yeah, because Mark Foster, you mentioned, because he came from a non-action film background, really, didn't he? So
yeah, no, he was. It's always strange when you sort of have come up against a director like that, because their ideas of stunts or what they think a stunt is slightly, they sort of, they think tripping over is a sort of stunt, even though technically it is. It's, you start putting proper stunts in front of it, like, no, it's too big, and then it's like, yeah, but this is a Bond film, it's supposed to be big, so so there's a little bit of bend in his arm there to get stuff in.
Yeah, it does seem like that in the making of documentaries about the film. But speaking of stunts, the man with the golden gun, the bridge jump. Are you pro or against the slide whistle?
I mean, the whistle thing, you sort of go, okay, whatever, but the stunt was freaking amazing. I mean, that's basically where we got the barrel roll from, for the world is not enough. And when Simon Crane mentioned it, it's like, I'm doing that. That, like, the man with the golden gun stunt is iconic.
It is.
And to sort of say, do it to something that sort of as a homage to that is, for me, it was like a massive sort of task. So it was really nice to sort of do that, because that is like still, I mean, I'll still say it today that the opening to The Spy Who Loved Me with a parachute jump off the cliff, to me, is still by far the best single shot stunt ever done, ever. Not just in a Bond film, but just ever, because it was so far ahead of its time. Like, people do that now for fun, but that was done 30 years before anyone was base jumping off of mountains, let alone with a pair of skis and all that sort of stuff, So, and I don't think you'll find stunts now, it's hard because there's so much out there, YouTube and what you can see, that no one's going to be sort of doing something that's not replicated for 10 years or 20 years, you know what I mean? So Rick Sylvester did that, and I've spoke to him a few times, and I'm like, cool. That's one thing that, even when I was designing the opening sequence to Casino Royale, that was my sort of bar of, I've got to try and get as good as that. I'm never going to beat it, but I want to try and if I can come second best to that, I've done a really good job.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I think they had like multiple cameras set up for the jump, didn't they? And only one worked, and that works in its favor because it's just one shot.
Exactly. I mean, something like that, you have to put a lot of cameras on it for obvious reasons. It was just like the whole thing, like, the music, then it goes quiet, and then the Union Jack comes out, and then the music comes in again. It was pretty much perfect.
Yeah. Apparently, was it Prince Charles stood up when the Union Jack came out of the
I can well imagine.
premiere.
When you watch it, you actually see the ski actually hits the parachute and that.
Yeah, you do.
But again,
crazy stuff.
A brilliant stunt and way ahead of its time.
Yeah, it certainly is. Because I think with the Golden Gun stunt, it was not the first time they used a computer to work out the angles and stuff.
Yeah. They funny enough, I worked with people a couple of years ago, because we did a similar stunt for the launch of one of the Land Rover Evokes or something like that at the O2 Arena, and they come over and they, obviously the computers back then to what the computers are now, like, you've got more power on your iPhone than what they had back then, you know what I mean? So but yeah, it was good to sort of meet them and chat with them about how they did it and how they worked it all out. I think it was a lot of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Good.
But yeah, it's epic. So let's have a look. Skyfall. Did you go to Scotland?
Yep, we was up the Scotland and everywhere else. We went on Skyfall. Where was he? Turkey.
Because the rooftops, of course.
Yeah, the rooftop chase there with Lee Morrison and Robbie Madison, and then someone who doesn't get a lot of credit but should is Rob Herring, who was on the camera bike chasing them. Like them two were on I think they was on 250 Hondas disguised to look like different bikes, but it was like Rob Herring was behind him on a motocross bike with a freaking great big camera on it. So he deserves a lot of credit for keeping up with them, because obviously Lee and Robbie are two amazing riders. But Rob Herring done an amazing job with the camera behind.
Capturing that footage. Yeah, because then I guess the same thing, was it the Bourne, the jump from the roof through the window? Is that what it was?
That was Dish Sharp who actually held the camera, So again, it's that was one of them sort of, when you're doing a stunt, you come up with a stunt, and then you figure out how to shoot it and all that. You sort of do it, and you sort of do it as a throwaway thing. Oh yeah, no, that looked great, and you sort of move on. And then it sort of stood out to be one of those sort of quite talked about stunts and shots, So it's nice to have that under your. We had Dan Bradley, who was the second unit director on that one.
Yeah.
So it was good to come up with all the ideas and sort of bang ideas between the two of us and all that, and how we could do that and how we could achieve this sort of shot and all that sort of stuff. So good fun.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess wire removal's so simple now.
Yeah, no, it's this, the compute, a lot of us are not a lover of the complete CGI stunts, which obviously a lot of people do, but I think the audiences now are so clever because they watch behind the scenes and they see it. So, I don't think they particularly like it. Obviously, there's certain films where it has to be like, all the Marvel stuff, obviously, realistically, the actor jumps up in the air and he's taken off and he's flying. They do a lot of work with them, like some motion capture stuff and all that, or, the Transformers, obviously the big robots, there's someone there probably doing the motion capture. So obviously the CGI works in a lot of places, but when they try and do CG stunts where they're physically taking over from someone or something that could physically do it, you're always better off doing it for real.
Yeah, because there's the jump off the roof in Quantum of Solace that Daniel does, and then in the making of you can see the harness and the thing, just because he is jumping across roofs onto
that again, that was the way we shot it, and we done different layers to it, which was again me and Dan and that. It was you use it to your advantage, and obviously if you do a little bit of CG stuff and that, you can sort of hopefully fool the audience, like I said. But if you start doing it too much, it always looks and I think the audience is they like to see this stuff done for real, because if it's CG, you're just watching a cartoon, so it just takes the excitement out of it personally.
Yeah, sure. I got them again. Spectre.
Ooh, yes.
Now, the supercar race that was in the streets of Rome, was that hindered because of the authorities?
No, so basically it was Sam Mendes' idea. He just wanted the two cars on the roads at night, no music, and just the noise of the engines. And we sort of said, well, look, can we put a few cars in? And he's like, no, I just want the two cars and the noise in. And funny enough, when you go to Rome and 2-3 o'clock in the morning, it is actually ridiculously quiet, which for a busy city. So we did that. Obviously, we put a couple of little distractions in there, going down the stairs, going up the wall ride and the little jump and all that sort of thing. But to have the permissions that we did in Rome, especially coming into Vatican Square, I had like Mark Higgins and Martin literally coming into Vatican Square at like 95 mile an hour, completely sideways, drifting in and round, and the film commissioner who was with us, Roberto, I forgot his second name. So again, Roberto, if you're listening, sorry. He was standing there and he's like, whatever you do, don't hit that building. So he's like, yeah, no, we're right. So yeah, like having those sort of permissions in Rome to sort of do that chase was it was great fun, and they was super, especially the Jag, that was so noisy. It was great.
Yeah, cool. Nice. So yes, I think that's it. Do you think Martin Campbell's got one more Bond film?
Do you know what? If they don't consider him, they're mad, because he's done the two best introductions in the last 40 years. Do you know what I mean? GoldenEye with Pierce and Casino with Daniel. So if his name's not on the list, then they're crazy not to.
I think someone, because the rumor has it. Who is it? The Prisoner of Azkaban. Alfonso Cuarón is in the running for director.
Oh, okay. I'd still prefer Martin.
Because it's Henry Cavill as Bond and Antonio Banderas as, I think, one of the classic bad guys. Because rumor is they're remaking one of the old films.
Okay.
Like Man with a Golden Gun or something.
I mean, Antonio is like he's a freaking great actor, really physical, physical, and super nice guy. So, and I must admit, Henry Cavill as Bond, I certainly wouldn't be against it. I think he'd do a good job. Obviously he auditioned for Casino, and by all accounts did a really good audition, but was just too young at the time. So maybe it's his time now. So
yeah,
he's got a good physique. He's obviously very physical. He's certainly got the charm. So it wouldn't be a bad chat.
Yeah, because he's supposed to be remaking Highlander at the moment, but
yeah, that's right.
It's been on the cards for a while, but we'll see.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no. If it's a shame. If it was my choice to make the choice, I'd certainly put Martin Campbell in charge.
Well, yeah, lightning strikes 3 times, I'm guessing.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, that's great. Thanks for that. I will let you get back to your day.
No worries. Thank you very much. All right. Sorry about yesterday, anyway, but
no worries.
All right, then, top man.
All right, you take care now.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.